All right, well, welcome to your Thursday evening astronomy dose. I'm Irene Pease. I'm with the Amateur Astronomers Association of New York, and this is round two. We did round one 2 weeks ago, and it was a little rough, but thanks if you're back, and welcome if you're new. So I kind of started off with a scene last time. I want to try and replay that because I forgot to turn my sound on. So this time, a little bit more experience keeping an eye on the comments to see if anything horrid is happening out there on the internet. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the programs that I'm using tonight. This one is Open Space. And if I pull up a little bit, we're kind of over the Brooklyn Museum. This is where I would normally be observing on Saturday nights. On Target First Saturdays, the Brooklyn Museum has this really fun event, but not these days. But yeah, it's right next to Prospect Park, and if you look south, you can see all the way down towards Verrazano Bridge. You see stars in the sky, except normally we don't see stars in the sky during the day because of scattering, but with this program, it kind of shows it. So I think you can see the names of the programs a little bit better now. Open Space, so this is Open Space that we're seeing right now, and you can download Open Space. It's a free software available at openspaceproject.com in the lower left there. And I'm also going to be using Stellarium tonight. You can download Stellarium. I love Stellarium. I have it on all my devices, and that's available at stellarium.com. So I encourage you to check those out. If you're not familiar with them, they're a lot of fun. So I think I'd set this so I could do kind of a sunset. There's all these other lines in here. And again, this is live flying, so yeah, just trying to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to switch over to Open Space again. Yeah. And we'll kind of fast forward to the sunset because this is kind of a nice view. I am partial to Brooklyn since I live here. All the boroughs have, their own beauty. From Brooklyn, we can look out across the water because we're on an island called Long Island. Most New Yorkers live on one island or another, whether it's Long Island or Manhattan Island or Staten Island. If you're in the Bronx, I guess you're on the mainland, but everyone else is on an island. But yeah, so these extra lines, I'm just going to turn those off. Those are lines representing the orbits of the planets, so we don't need those right now. But yeah, I really like how Open Space does this kind of nice sunset. So this is the sunset for tonight. You can see there's a little dot in there. That's the moon. So we have a very new moon. It was a new moon just yesterday. So just a nice tiny crescent that maybe you caught outside tonight. And if not, that's okay. It'll be a bigger crescent tomorrow, so you can look for it then. So Open Space is pretty fantastic. It uses real data from a variety of catalogs. A lot of what we're going to see is from the Digital Universe Atlas that's curated at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And I should mention Open Space. AMNH is also one of the partners that helps develop Open Space. And they also have partners in Sweden and Utah and at NYU, and I feel like I'm forgetting one, but it's all on their website. So check that out. So yeah, you can't really see stars during the day, but just the way that software runs. But you can see them at night. We have this kind of view of the night sky in Open Space. But I wanted to start off tonight kind of on the to-do list is to look and see what's up in the sky using Stellarium a little bit. And then we're going to fly out and see a few things. And hello. CFA Tusker 13, welcome. So I'm going to switch over to Stellarium and take a look at our evening sky there. So this is just after sunset. This is right about now, 8:04. Actually, yeah, this is exactly set to now. If you can see, there's like a little clock down in the corner, kind of behind the watermark there. But Venus, really bright still. So I think this week is one of the brightest nights that it'll be for this kind of round, as Venus is getting closer to Earth, and then eventually it'll get further away, fade. Last time we looked at this cluster here, the Pleiades cluster, and we actually went and flew around in the Pleiades cluster. So that was a lot of fun. We're not going to visit that cluster again, but we are going to take a look at where some of its similar objects are in the galaxy. So this is kind of our night sky, looking towards the west. We still have Orion, kind of setting towards the west. We have our winter triangle. So the winter triangle is from Betelgeuse, Sirius, and Procyon. And yeah, I know it's not winter anymore, but we still call it the winter triangle because it's really high in the sky in winter. So that's just how we name things. I guess if you're looking away from the winter sky and you want to know what's up, for the spring sky, in case you have a view of the sky or can go outside safely, the big thing up there, I'm going to say, is Leo. So you can see the star Regulus. Regulus is the bright star in the constellation Leo the Lion. If you can find it, I dare you to imagine a lion there. For those of us who don't have enough imagination or haven't had enough wine yet tonight, that's supposed to help. Okay. I'm just going to throw in the stick figure for now. This kind of hook is known as the sickle on some maps. It's an asterism, just kind of a group of stars that we refer to as an object. I kind of see it like a big coat hanger, like a big hook, and then like teeny tiny shoulders for the hanger. So these other two stars would be part of that coat hanger. But Regulus is kind of at the heart of Leo the Lion. And then he's like lying down, except this other picture shows him standing up. So I don't know what that's about. I see him lying down. He's got this star Denebula at his tail. If you're familiar with some of the other summer constellations, you might recognize the name. Deneb is the tail of Cygnus the swan. So Deneb and then Denebula, there's like a tail thing happening there. So that's a big constellation, big bright thing, one of the bigger bright things. If you're kind of facing south, it's going to be pretty high in the sky. So that's my challenge for you this week. Find Leo. The other stuff that's up there in the sky that we're going to go visit are what we call some deep sky objects. So I can turn on some of that. Spring is really going to be galaxy season. So if I zoom in here, there should be like red things popping up. All those little red things, those are galaxies. Yeah, those are hard to see. They're really far away. Like, we talk about the stars being far away, galaxies are even farther. And so they're bright, but they're just really far away, so they look faint. So we're going to save that for another time, but I want to talk about these yellow things. What's up with the yellow? So if we look back over here, if we could see behind this tree, the Pleiades would be yellow. So the Pleiades were an open cluster. It's a group of stars that all kind of form from the same cloud of gas. And so they're relatively young. And when I say stars are relatively young, I mean like, several million, a billion at most, because stars live for a really long time. It's not like a few months. It's not like yesterday. So these are groups of relatively young stars that have kind of formed, and they're all kind of hanging out together. And we notice they're kind of along the same part of the sky. Like if we look over here, let's look in the east. Oh, there's some yellow spots, but those are different yellow spots. So these have like a little circle with a cross. So that's a different kind of star cluster. Those are globulars and they are glorious, but yeah, another time with those. We're gonna look at, the open clusters. So the kind of dotted yellow circles. So that's where we're headed tonight. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch us back over to open space. So that was our stellarium view. Really nice for just kind of checking out the night sky. And then back to open space, I have to do this carefully because when I practiced earlier, I completely lost the Earth. So we're going to fly up off of the Earth. Whoa, leave the Earth behind, but not get too far away so that I can still find it. And is it gone? Okay, whew, it's there. Space is really big, and it's easy to lose stuff when you're out there because it's really big. The planet might seem big, but like compared to space, it's small, I promise. So I'm going to turn on the orbits of the planets again, just so I can kind of reference and show you a little bit of context as we're moving out away from the Earth. And again, this is a lot of real data, so I'm not sure how the stream is going to hold up with some of it. I did do a practice run through earlier, but I wasn't trying to stream it also. So the Digital Universe Atlas it's real data, and it's a big universe. We're not even doing whole universe, just the galaxy tonight. So we'll see how that holds up. So you can see this little blob, that's the Earth still. We have the moon's orbit going around the Earth. And I'm going to try and turn on just kind of some markers here. We saw what the constellations looked like in Stellarium. So we'll go ahead and do constellations. Whew, in open space. So these are our open space constellations. We saw these last time, but I think I forgot to turn my sound on while I was explaining that. So the red constellations, those we can see those are all along this line. If we're looking kind of along the line where the orbits of the planets are, we're following along all the red constellations. So those are the constellations of the zodiac. They were kind of singled out because when we look up in the sky from Earth, we see the sun, the moon, and the planets all kind of moving through those constellations. So those mark the plane of our solar system. And then we have kind of the salmon color constellations. That's most of the rest of them, except for two really well-known constellations. This one you might think, huh, at first, but just ignore most of it and pay attention to like this part that I bet you all recognize. So yeah, Big Dipper. So the Big Dipper is just kind of the back and tail of the Big Bear. Bears don't really have tails like that, but whatever. And then, so the Big Dipper, or part of Ursa Major, because that's a relatively well-known one. And then also kind of well-known, we kind of saw this one last time, also Orion. So those are in this kind of blue. It's not quite classic blue. It's a little bit brighter than classic blue, Pantone color of the year, but we're getting there. So those are our constellations. So we're going to move way, way far away from the Earth. We're going to move out past all the planets. It's like traveling faster than light. This is my FTL drive. You're welcome. And I'm going to pause here because notice how the constellations haven't changed yet. Constellations haven't changed yet. I know you noticed that. So the stars are really, really far away. And like I said, the galaxies are even further away. But the stars are so far away. We could view the stars from anywhere in our solar system, and they still look the same. It's not like if you move out to Pluto or something, you're like, oh, I have to learn new constellations. No, you don't. You're good to go. So let's keep moving away because we can. And oh yeah, once we're out here, then we start to see, we start to notice a change in the constellations. And not all of the stars that are close by are super bright, so they're not all connected to the lines. And I'm getting a little bit of lag here. Oh, and there was a nice star cluster. That's the one that I missed last week. So quick pit stop. I'm going to turn off the constellation lines. And this star cluster here, ooh, this is the Hyades. So the Hyades, that's a big cluster. That's basically the face of Taurus the bull. It looks like kind of a big V as seen from Earth. We can see there's a whole mess of stars in here. It's a relatively close cluster to the Earth. It's closer than the Pleiades, so it looks more spread out in our sky. So yeah, there's a little tour of the Hyades. Nice and pretty. Very nice. All right, that was fun. Let's go. So further out, until we kind of see the galaxy, and then we can just use these constellation lines as a marker so we know where's Earth, where's home. There it is. It's in the center of those lines. And just FYI, I like astronomy for the sparkly stuff. And so just seeing like all the sparkles kind of makes me happy. And you know what? Every now and then, once a day or so, these days, just do something that makes you happy. For me, it's sparkles. So yeah, sparkles. So we'll kind of blob around the galaxy. Again, this is a little context. The Milky Way galaxy is about 100,000 light years across. And so we're about halfway out on one of the spiral arms. And it's a disk, so it's relatively flat. There's kind of a bulge towards the center, and we'll see that as we kind of go floop. So you can see it's a little more bulgy in towards the center where it's really, really bright. But these arms that we're out on, they're relatively thin. So again, all the stars that we see in the night sky are part of the Milky Way galaxy. So when we talk about the galaxy in the night sky, really what we mean is we're looking in the plane as opposed to up above the plane or down below the plane, where there's just not quite the same density of stars that we're looking through. It's like looking through the fog versus looking up out of the fog. So I brought us out here because I said I was going to look at some sparkly things, some of those open clusters, because I keep talking about all the things that I'm not going to talk about. So I should actually talk about the things that I mean to talk about. So let's look at some clusters. So I'm going to turn on a data set, green dots. Yeah, this is real data. They're not really green, but all these green dots represent different open clusters. So all that stuff that we saw in stellarium kind of smeared along part of the Milky Way, that one part of the sky, that's where the quote-unquote winter Milky Way is. We notice that, yeah, most of those green dots are in the plane of the galaxy. They're not way up. Let's just look back again. They're not way up above or way down below the plane of the galaxy, but they're mostly in the plane. And it's not like they're all mostly near us, all right? So there's a little bit of observation bias here. So there are actually open clusters kind of distributed throughout the Milky Way, but it's hard to see through all this other gas and stars and dust and stuff. So this data set is marking the open clusters that we're seeing that are relatively nearby. Right? So they're going to be all over the place. Imagine a more uniform distribution throughout the plane of the galaxy, but these are just the ones that we've mapped with this data set. So those are new stars, and new stars form in the plane of the galaxy. It's not like there isn't stuff up above or below the plane of the galaxy, but that's where the stars form, because that's where star forming stuff is. So that was the next thing I wanted to show you, was the star forming stuff. So these blue dots, we've mapped a lot of those. These are more extended in some cases. So we have these mapped out all over the place, more extensively throughout the galaxy. So these are H2 regions. So most of the universe, well, most of the universe is dark energy and then dark matter. But of the regular matter stuff, like that you and me and pencils and trees and things are made of, most of that baryonic matter, as we like to call it, is hydrogen. Hydrogen of some form. So this is big clouds of hydrogen gas out in space, and that's what stars are made of. So if the star forming stuff, all of this big clouds of hydrogen, and when I say big, I'm meaning tens or hundreds of light years across. So, big. So these big clouds of hydrogen gas, those are mostly, oh look, in the plane of the galaxy. So if the star-forming stuff is in the plane of the galaxy, it shouldn't be too surprising that the stars that form from the star-forming stuff are in the plane of the galaxy. And a lot of them stay there, but again, remember the green dots, those are relatively young stars, or groups of young stars. And over time, they get perturbed, other stars come by, things happen, interactions, etc. I'm just going to wave my hands and say interactions. If it were a small scale, I would wave my hands and say quantum mechanics, but this is large scale, so interactions. And eventually they might get perturbed and not stay in the plane of the galaxy. So let's take a look at see our sun. Does our sun stay in the plane of the galaxy? Well, we've got a data set for that. I actually need to search for it a little bit for realsies. One moment here. Let me just be in awe of all the sparkly things while I look for my data set. Star orbits. Okay, so I can actually bring up the sun's orbit, see if this breaks everything. Whoa, it didn't break. It's trying to break, but it's not breaking yet. This is great. So yeah, so that's the orbit of the sun around the Milky Way. Okay, whoa. You know how everything's in motion. So the moon is going around the Earth is going around the sun is going around a big black hole, Sagittarius A star, and everything else is in the center of the galaxy. So that's where we're headed. We're headed like kind of this way. I think, yeah, we're going this way around. So this is a projection of the next billion years. So it's about 4 orbits. It takes a little less than 1/4 billion years for the sun to orbit the Milky Way. So we usually say like 225, 230 million years. So 230 million years ago, what were we doing? I think that was like Stegosaurus, not T-Rex. T-Rex was way later, I think. If you're a paleontologist, please don't get mad at me. But yeah, so it's been a while since, you know, we made an orbit. And then the question is, well, you know, if everything is moving, how can we tell that we've been all the way around? And I'm just going to say tangential velocity and wave my hands again. So that's the sun's orbit, and it's relatively stable, right? So it has a relatively constant radius, right? It's not, you know, it seems to be wobbling a teensy bit, and it's more or less staying in the plane. So we're very well behaved. Well, the sun is, and then Earth is just kind of along for the ride because gravity. But we can look at some other star orbits. Let's check out, LaSalle 9352. This is what LaSalle 9352 has been doing, or will be doing, over the next billion years. A little more off orbit, kind of off the plane, a little up, a little down. Yeah, not quite as stable. All right, so that one's, I don't know if it's more exciting or just more dangerous or edgy, or we don't really have to personify these. Barnard's orbit. Ooh, that's kind of pretty. That's like one of those like loopy loop things that you make with the etchy. I don't remember what they're called, but kind of pretty. Still mostly in the plane, right? So it's doing this kind of weird loopy thing, but it's in the plane, all right. And then we have stuff like, oh, that's not as exciting. Yeah, let's try this one. So this one, I don't know, some of the data was cutting out earlier. I think just because it's kind of all over the place. So this goes way up above and down below the plane. You're doing loops. This looks more like one of the roller coasters you'd want to ride at an amusement park. Not super stable, all right? This one, oh, super fun. I think I saw a picture of that one in chemistry class. So not all stars are in super stable orbits. So some of them are off the plane, some of them go closer or further from the center. So they all pretty much start in the plane, you know, with the star forming stuff, all the blue dots, and then they kind of hang out with other stars that form from the clouds of gas of star forming stuff. So those are the green dots. And then eventually some of them stick around in the plane, like our sun. And it's not like we're a baby. Like the sun is middle-aged. It's kind of going through midlife crisis right now, I guess. It's about 5 billion years old, has another 5 billion or so years to go. But depending on what other interactions happen to a star, it might get kind of kicked up and take a little bit of one of those roller coaster rides. So we'll come back in a little ways. If anyone has questions, I think there's too many people on, but I'm happy to take a question or two. I'm not like an expert, so I don't know if I can answer everything. I'm happy to say, oh, that's an interesting question. I have no idea, because I'm really good at that. But yeah, we'll fly back in towards Earth and then kind of see the perspective of all this stuff kind of along the plane of our Milky Way galaxy. So we can see the sun coming up here. Hey, sun. So FYI, the sun is super hot during the day and at night. I kind of got like a new perspective on night when I realized that, oh yeah, the night, it's like we're basically in the Earth's shadow, and started thinking about shadows and how there's shadows in space. There's shadows in space. Like a lot of them. It's kind of a neat thing. I'll talk about that sometime. Yeah, so we're coming back towards the Earth, and even from out here, I think we're close enough. We're, within the solar system-ish, outer solar system. And you can see kind of the plane of the Milky Way galaxy here. So all those blue dots, remember those are star-forming regions. And then all the green dots, those are collections of baby stars, open clusters. And yeah, they all kind of line up with, if I can turn them off and on, kind of blink them off and on, they all line up with the plane of the galaxy. So there's a lot of stuff that's in our galaxy that's in the plane, and then there are other parts, stuff in our galaxy that are outside of the plane. I'm looking for my clusters. Yeah, so I can kind of blink those off and on. Here, that's kind of like a fainter part of the Milky Way. But as we come around, up here we can see more Milky Way along there. Summer Milky Way, brighter Milky Way. Kind of nice. Ta-da! So since I mentioned shadows and I have a couple minutes and no one has any questions, I'm just going to zoom to one of my favorite things to see shadows on. We're going to zoom. You can guess. I dare you to guess. Oops. Yeah. Where are we going? I don't know. That was Jupiter. There's the orbit of Mars in red. Kind of looks like we're going home. Home sweet home. This is actually one of the first things I mentioned tonight. Past Earth, the moon. So the moon is kind of like this big rock that is like, nearby. Oh, on an astronomical scale, it's kind of boring because it's like right in our own backyard. But because it's so close, you look at it with like a telescope and you can see so much amazing detail. And so I just kind of want to zoom in. I don't know if I can zip through time a little bit here. Go through a couple days. Pause. All right. So I'm just going to come back around and take a look. So the moon, a lot of people want to look at the moon when it's full and, go out and go stargazing and oh, just, it's so glorious. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. But when it's full, there's no shadows. So the full moon is like one of the worst times to actually look at it through a telescope or something. So I don't have the right data set to show this as beautifully, but just thinking about like the shadows that are cast on the moon, we see more detail because of those shadows. So if you're looking at a full moon, it's like it's floodlit. There's no contrast. There's no shadows. But when you have some shadow there, when it's like, between day and night, you can see the contrast. Like you can see how deep craters are as, shadows are cast into the craters and stretch across. And then like the rim of the crater casts a shadow onto the surrounding landscape. It's really amazing. It's really tremendous. Just to be able to look and get kind of that context, see that depth of the extreme terrain. I mean, there's no weathering like we have on Earth. The only weathering really comes from meteorites, like even micrometeorites coming along and kind of pelting the surface, beating it up into a really, really fine, scratchy dust. So not fine, but scratchy. Very small, but very, very jagged bits of dust. So big craters, small craters, tiny craters. That's kind of the bulk of the weathering on the moon. So there's not like wind and water kind of erosion wearing down mountains like we have on Earth. So they're pretty rich. So we'll do some cool tour of the moon at some point when I'm feeling like in a super moon mood. But those were the kind of a tour of our, like I said, our local universe, which even in the galaxy is kind of our local universe. And I don't really know how big the universe is or if it curves back on itself or what. So I'm just going to consider everything in this data set the local universe. But ending kind of back home-ish, and happy to take requests for next time. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to go back because I made a whole extra thing here. Whoa, look at that. Again, I'm Irene Pease with the Amateur Astronomers Association. Check us out. We have cool stuff happening. Take a class, join one of our special interest groups. We have really cool astrophotographers. We have some other online streaming stuff happening. So check out our website, check out our calendar. And if you're interested in either of the programs that I was using tonight, again, this is Open Space, and the other one that I was using was Stellarium. So have a good night and be safe out there.